today I've prepared a small presentation to tell you more about our story, our DNA at MEVP. And I think, I chose this title, Fueling the Next Big Thing in Lebanon, because when we started 5-6 years ago, we believed that we wanted to fuel the next big thing in MENA. And the digital economy, the innovations in technologies, the introduction of mobile, the cloud computing capabilities, all of this enabled a fantastic new horizon for our country and our region. So we at MEVP are very proud to be closely pegged to that ecosystem. Just a quick overview of who we are. We're today actually proudly the largest venture capital firm in the Arab world, and we're based in Lebanon. It took us time to build this company, and a lot of love and a lot of attention to the entrepreneurs we invest in. We manage more than $120 million of assets under management. We have invested in 28 companies today. Our collective revenues of our companies exceeds the $150 million added to the economies that we invest in. The size of our portfolio created more than 900 jobs. So within our network at MEVP, we've seen a lot with regards to building and solving problems, solving tech problems. We screen more than 800 companies a year, and I'm very happy to say that since we launched our impact fund in Lebanon last year, we screened more than 300 Lebanese companies. So that tells you a lot about the size of the market and how the entrepreneurship system is getting better year on year. Something we do very well is co-investments, up rounds, and exits. We are at 17 up rounds and exits, partial exits, and full exits. I've taken a selection of some of the cool companies we've invested. All of the above are Lebanese companies. Some of them are brand names in the Arab world. Some of them are targeting larger markets in the US, in Europe. I put a selection of the clients that these companies serve. We have the likes of Disney and HP and Vodafone and partners like SAP and the telecoms and the media of the Middle East. Some of these companies maybe are unknown to you or be on your radar very soon, but some of them are actually too famous to mention. I'm thinking of Anghami, Shahia, the likes of those big companies. And those are Lebanese companies created by Lebanese entrepreneurs in our ecosystem that are achieving amazing things. Sorry about that. Okay. It's going too fast. Okay. So when we speak about the venture capital industry in MENA, one of the key learnings we learned, one of the key things we learned at MEVP is that venture capital in our part of the world works fundamentally differently than any other place. Therefore, as a VC industry, homegrown VC industry, our modus operandi is completely different than what you can see in Silicon Valley or any parts of the world. And that actually boils down to something that we have learned over the past years, is to deliver a service to the companies we invest in. And that path to exit is actually not an easy path. And therefore, at MEVP, we take pride to enable those different steps, starting from the onboarding of the entrepreneurs, whether it's at the seed round or a Series A round, going into governance. We have a large team. We have a team of 16 professionals to serve those companies, because the type of entrepreneurs in our part of the world have different needs and are different than anywhere else. So therefore, that roadmap that takes us to exit is full of challenges. We're talking about product market fit, scaling some of these products across the region, going to millions of users, millions of customers. Up rounds, we brought more than $50 million of follow-on and partial exits into our portfolio companies. This is fresh money coming from outside the country into some of the companies in the countries. The path to scalability has to be clear. We really help those entrepreneurs and companies enable these strategic partnerships as they grow, and finally, we are playing an active role in selling and exiting these companies. That's something actually I feel personally very engaged with. Anyone who reads the state of the economy today, we live in interesting times. And for me, it boils down to this formula. Actually, today's economy is telling us that the return on capital is much higher than the return of labor. So you're better off with an asset that's bringing you money than actually going and working for somebody. And that's the reality of the economies we live in. Therefore, the answer to that equation is start your own business, create your own wealth. And entrepreneurship is actually a way to build this wealth and build that wealth for us. Therefore, in Lebanon, we have a lot of the ingredients to succeed. We have an educated, experienced workflows, multilingual. We have world exposure, geographic proximity, global partnerships, affordable cost structures, and today, capital. Finally, everybody who knows me personally knows that I'm passionate of history. This ship was built in Lebanon 3,000 years ago. This ship is called the Bayrim. Think of it as the A380 of today. This ship enabled commerce across the Mediterranean, and it was one of the reasons that commerce exploded. One of the best technological innovations of mankind built in this country. So, I think we could do something like that again. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. Paul, you up?
Good afternoon. I'm very, very happy to be here. My name is Paul Chucrallah. I'm the managing director of BDL Fund 2.
Your people?
Yeah, paid for. I have a couple of points that I will make about BDL Fund 2 itself. I'm going to make them very quickly because we're about to announce a few transactions later on. Our chairman, Maroun Chamas, will be announcing a few transactions in less than an hour. So the points that I want to make is that the 331 has changed everything. And it's very important because, we were sitting with the press earlier and we got the same questions over and over again. Where are the $400 million? Where are the transactions? What is happening? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a number of misconceptions about the $400 million. The $400 million are not a yearly flow that has to go to entrepreneurs. It's the overall envelope of what we can invest over a period of a few years. So that's the first point. The second point is that the three funds that are here, that are the first three funds, have all started really to operate in 2015. Impact was probably a bit busier earlier.
We started in 2010 as MBVP.
Impact
last year.
We, of course, as BDL had the first fund in the country 7 or 8 years ago, but that was prehistoric. So what is the value of the 331? Of course, it has made available $400 million. And we're seeing the changes. This conference is a good sign of how much things have changed over the last 2 years. But there's a value in things that people find more difficulty to detect. And it's the value of information. I want to talk a bit about that because there are what I call feedback loops. Once people know that there are $400 million, once people know that there are possibilities to start your own business and get financed, they start behaving in a different way. I'm going to give a few examples. I'm not sure, and I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone, that even the regulators, the Banque du Liban, would have foreseen the kind of conversations they would be having with us today, the kind of conversations they're having with the banks and with the funds. So that's the value of information, because once the circular is out there, it has started changing people's behavior, and these behaviors have had a ripple effect. So the BDL started thinking differently about the way to approach the economy. The banks have started thinking very, very differently. When we started pitching, all of us, we had difficulty in going and talking to people, and sometimes, what is it that you're talking about? And sometimes we lost banks because of that. Today, we are delighted to see that the banks are getting our reports and asking increasingly pointed questions, increasingly detailed questions. They're learning the lingo. They're trying to understand how we do our business on a daily basis. They are actually behaving in a way that turns them into cheerleaders for the economy, for the knowledge economy as a whole. And lastly, for now, the entrepreneurs. I was sitting judging a competition early on, and there were people in their third years of engineering at school. There was no way for these guys to move to a conference such as this one 2 years ago. I'm not even saying 10 years ago. Today, these guys were probably dreaming up of ways to find employment in the Gulf or in Paris or to emigrate to Canada afterwards or whatever. Today, it's an important part of their thinking process to consider that possibilities are there, and still a couple of years before they graduate, they started to think about what they could do with their lives differently, going back to points that were raised earlier on. We are rediscovering our DNA as risk takers, as innovators. This DNA was never lost because the entire ecosystem in the Gulf, the knowledge industries of the Gulf are by and large managed by Lebanese expats. So we're discovering that we could actually do this stuff here. And that is an extremely positive point that's happening. So the 331 is doing very, very, very well. Thank you very much. No need to ask us about the money. You will hear more about that later on. And that is my first quote of the day. I want to say that the state of the 331 is good. I'm getting inspiration from US politics. The second point that I would like to perhaps discuss more briefly is the availability of funds across the entire value chain of possibilities. So now with IM Capital and MEVP Impact, we've invested in a company called Speed. We're starting to help people start their businesses from the idea stage. Later on, perhaps Kafalat will take over. Then we join them back. Then they go to another fund, etc. The entire value chain is being covered in terms of finance, in multiple instruments covering debt and equity. The system is there. The human resources that we have been losing, 70% of graduates in STEM specialties are leaving the country within months of graduation. The human resources are there. We have the possibilities. There are minuses. We need to solve them as quickly as possible. We have to solve the issue of the infrastructure. We have to do it right now. Right now. I mean, this is something that we need to keep hammering every time somebody takes a stage. We need to have reliable electricity and internet right away. But apart from that, the ingredients on an economic plane to have the country really reigniting its economy and rejuvenating it and moving from real estate banking, which we love. There have been great stabilizers in the economy, but also to add stuff like innovation and research. This is something that we need to be doing right away. The thing that I want to say is that we are very, very optimistic. I mean, the fact that a conference such as this one can be a success and that we find all these entrepreneurs around and they're asking increasingly detailed and interesting questions makes me very, very optimistic indeed.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. That's amazing. All right. So now we've gone through the quick intros of the funds. I think I'm taking the route of the questions from an entrepreneur sort of perspective, and because I want this to be, I assume most of the folks in this room are either entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs or looking at it. So I'm going to ask questions sort of as hopefully it will be useful and practical for them, right? So what is the typical stage you guys are in, seed, and what's the average check size that you guys are writing, each of you all?
We write check sizes of anywhere between $3 and $10 million. We can go a little bit above that. But the investment sizes can go all the way up to 20 million if necessary with co-investors. So later stagers.
You guys are probably more Series B.
We're Series B.
Okay.
We're Series B growth stage.
Technically, we can write a check as low as 100,000 and as big as 10 million. Obviously, with the prevalence of co-investors, the firepower could be also much bigger. So but we like to, our sweet spot is anywhere between 3 to 5 million as a first check. 3 to 5 million.
3 to 5 million as well.
But we could do seed if we see something that we really like, and we could do much more than 5 if we want to follow.
So out of those, you guys did 28? I forget the...
Yes, since inception. 28
deals. How many of them are seed, and how many of them are Series A?
Some of our best companies started with $100,000. Anghami is one of them, piece of paper and $100,000. And then we kept on following. We poured many, many millions into Anghami. And we brought in multiple co-investors, the largest media group in MENA, MBC Group, Etisalat Group, one of the largest telecom operators. And yeah, we are extremely activist. If we see something we like, we stick to it, we follow. We can start small and grow, and we bring others to the table as well. We like that. We love this co-investment model.
Excellent. Paul.
Our maximum size is about $7.5 million. We don't intend to do any transaction of this size. Our sweet spot is between $1 and $3 million. We have made one transaction above that threshold. In terms of lower bound, we don't mind any. I mean, as long as the market needs seed and we're capable of providing it, we'll do it. Our smallest transactions were in the 100K as well.
So what are the sectors you guys are investing in specifics, right? You're all in tech. What are the specific sectors that you look at, and what are the ones that you just won't touch?
We look at everything we understand in tech, the usual internet, tech, hardware, software, these kinds of things, marketplaces, SaaS. I'm a 20-year veteran of e-commerce, and I try to avoid e-commerce for now in the region. It's all about the problems of customs. So I would right now, I will shy away from pure e-commerce transactions, not logistics. Logistics I like. E-commerce itself is problematic.
And what's just a quick follow-on? So what is the most successful company in your portfolio that sort of represents some sector that I'm just curious?
Well, we are a new fund. We started 4 months ago. We made one investment. We're working on 3 investments right now. I will give you that answer next year, and it will be a very interesting year.
So we focus on investing, backing top-notch entrepreneurs that are solving indigenous big problems. And historically, there's been 3 areas that we've focused on. First one is content, digital content, and you know, the pain point of Arabic content is obvious. We have a big market, very hungry consumers, and therefore investing in that sector for us has been great. We've done amazing companies in that sector. Therefore, we understand it. We have a big appetite to invest in it. A second segment that we know also well is marketplaces. We've invested in many marketplaces companies, and those companies can scale outside of MENA, and that's the beauty of that model. We've also had some good successes in that vertical. A third that we have started developing a couple of years ago, which was called B2B companies, now is actually shaping up to becoming a software as a service or cloud-based companies, is actually SaaS. And we've seen in Lebanon an amazing set of companies that are going after that vertical. We've invested in some of the, some great companies. Fadel Partners is one of them that I'm thinking about. So these 3 verticals, we try to shy away from stuff that we don't understand. For instance, we're not experts in hardware, so therefore we haven't really invested in hardware businesses. We'd love to be able to do so, and we are, and I think very soon we'll be, talking about that openly as we're figuring out a model to do so. So the tech sphere is a very large sphere. There's many things into it. We like to stick to what we want, but at the end of the day, sometimes when we see an amazing team that are doing something great, then we're ready to take risks and go into outside of our comfort zone and be exposed to new verticals as well.
Great.
We have 5 sectors that we invest in. Information and communication technologies, writ large. So this includes web, SAS, etc., cloud computing, anything you can think of. We have digital content and containers, because digital content can be delivered using some platforms. This includes games, movies, music, etc. We have fashion and design, which is a sector driven by innovation and by knowledge. So that's one of the sectors that we plan to invest in. We have industrial design. We were the first investor in Instabit from BDLAccelerate Fund 1. And we believe that hardware is one of those skills that can actually change an economy for the better, especially with the 3D printing tools and all the makers movement that we're seeing. And we have renewable energies. The sectors that we're looking at on top of those are life sciences. We would very, very much like to see something happening in this. I mean, pure life sciences, not something in life sciences which is activated or enabled by ICT, because we could do those. And fintech. Fintech obviously is one of those sectors where Lebanon has a competitive advantage, which is incredible, but we need to have regulation moving in the right direction before we can dive into that.
So what's the best way for companies to get in touch with you or founders to get in touch with you? What is it? Do introductions? Do you guys go to conferences to hunt people? What is your preferred way for them to get in touch with you? Being very practical.
I mean, I can take it. This is a people's business. You know, something I learned over the years is that venture capital and entrepreneurship is a people's business. So some of the best companies that we received and we invested in actually came from our network of friends and entrepreneurs. As I said earlier, that there are around 900 people that work across our portfolio companies. Those are our best ambassadors and best sources of deal flow. Cold call works, you know, cold calling, you know, just showing up,
cold calling works for you guys?
That with us.
Really?
If it's the entrepreneur, again, it goes down that person. We've met some of these amazing entrepreneurs based on a cold call or a meeting, and then we invested in them. I mean, we have one here, Ali. Can we say that? We met you, a week ago? Yeah? Money is wired? Yes, here you go. That's an example of an amazing cold call. Ali is building, the Vault is going after a big problem in the world, which is intercity traffic. So there are really no rules, but relationships, as an entrepreneur coming to the VC, being prepared is important. Also building relationship on the long run. And this is why I think we're a bit different than Silicon Valley. I spend a lot of time nurturing relationships with entrepreneurs before we invest as well. So, you know, that's also.
I mean, we do that too in Silicon Valley. We do that too. We also nurture entrepreneurs before we invest.
Of course you do. But the amount of time I spend, maybe 50% of my time is spent meeting entrepreneurs and multiple meetings and drinking coffee. My, coffee consumption level has increased since I'm in this business, many folds. The reality of the Arab world and Lebanon is that you need to build those relationships with the entrepreneurs so that you look eye to eye and you're able to build the company together. And that doesn't happen sometimes overnight. You got to build those relationships.
So do you have any specific practical advice? Like, what do you hate when an entrepreneur comes to, like, you see them and you're like, I'm evaluating, you're pitching me. Like, what is the one piece of practical advice that they should never, ever do? For you guys. Yes, anyone.
Well,
general.
I mean, I want to let the speakers probably talk about that.
About meeting the entrepreneurs, we want to meet any and every entrepreneur in the Lebanese market, now, forever. And anybody who wants a meeting with us will get it. That's a policy. It has been the case since this year. About coffee, I think that if we disbanded our team, the coffee prices would go down in the country because we're all very heavy coffee drinkers. The problem with entrepreneurs, especially those that think they have a brilliant idea, is that they don't spend enough time researching whether somebody else has done it. And it's good, because if you don't have a certain level of delusion, then perhaps you would not start a business, because it's so risky and so hard and so difficult and so stressful. And entrepreneurs still want to do it. So part of the delusion manifests itself through them not doing enough research, or not understanding how things are done elsewhere, or not understanding the way we think, or coming with preconceived ideas, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that the process of education and perhaps the information domino effect that I mentioned earlier is starting to work. So we get entrepreneurs talking to us about the clauses in our contract. They know exactly what to expect, much better than in the old days when we gave a term sheet. We used to sit with the entrepreneur to say, you know, you should really be careful about these clauses because these are really constraining clauses for you. We don't want you to pretend that things were not explained sufficiently. Today, these guys are coming, and from the first second, they know exactly what to negotiate on. So I'm happy that the movement is in the right direction, but it's not there yet.
Henri, thoughts?
They have to be prepared. You have to know what you want, to know where you're going, to know what your numbers are. You have to do the job of an entrepreneur. You can't expect to be taken seriously if you don't do the job. So even if you take your first meeting, which you might get very easily here, your first meeting may very well be your last. Don't make the mistake of thinking you're going to be able to meet with the VC 3, 4, 5 times while you refine your pitch. Make sure that the first time's the good one.
Do you guys care about, you guys mainly invest for companies focusing on the region as a whole, right? Versus, have you seen any of your companies actually look sort of like from the beginning, think about going global, like to Europe or to the US? I'm curious of how much that's changed over the last couple of years.
Around 40% of our portfolio is going after global problems since day one. They just happen to be in Lebanon. I can name a couple. Treasury Express, which is a company that is in the fintech space, is developed in Lebanon. It's a cloud-based treasury software solution that was actually sold to the Ministry of Finance of the UAE, the likes of Orange Group globally, ADP, the likes of Dailymotion, and a list of 50 clients, high-caliber clients. I spoke about Fadil Partners, who's been an amazing company since day one, selling to the who's who of the media industry in the US, Lebanese company based here. So we have a lot of companies in Lebanon going after global problems, big problems. Now, some companies focus on MENA because their market is MENA. They're solving problems that are relevant to MENA, such as infrastructure problems, payment problems, content, etc. But we do both, and we've seen both.
There is no Lebanese market. I mean, it's a pilot market, but there's no Lebanese market per se. A company that is a VC-backed company that needs to grow to certain levels will never be able to do it in Lebanon. So Lebanon is really just a pilot market. So you're either going to hit MENA alone because of the Arabic or cultural nature of the business, or you're going to go global. You might go to Africa. You might go to emerging countries or globally.
So the advice is go big or go home, right?
It's always been.
That's the way it should be.
I mean, it's an equation driven by our expected returns, right? When we're looking at a fund, when we're looking at an IRR of 20%, 25%, 30% net on a funds level, this means you cannot go and invest in a company that's not going to yield a 50, 60, 70% IRR, which translates into a company that's growing in anywhere between 15 to 20% month on month. This is an okay growth for an internet business. So yes, it is driven by the return profile that we're trying to seek, one. Second, the internet doesn't work for you cannot build a business on the internet for 2 million people in Lebanon, 2 million or 3 million connected on the internet. The nature of the internet is such that you need to invest.
Sorry.
I hope I'm not boring you.
Yeah, no worries.
The nature of the internet is such that you need to build large companies that talk to the everyday man. So there's no point in doing a company for the Lebanese market. And the economics don't work, nor for the business itself, nor for the investors. You have to go big or go home.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the main point for anyone who's an entrepreneur, right? You can be entrepreneurial, but you need to understand if you take venture capital money, we expect you to be growing at exponential sort of growth rates. If you're looking to sort of serve like a local market or sort of a niche that's only to cap out at like whatever, 10 million or 100 million, you can build a great business, but like that means that you will probably shouldn't be raising money from VCs, I think is a net. And I think a lot of young entrepreneurs don't necessarily understand that. And I have lots and lots of conversations with entrepreneurs where it's like, you shouldn't be talking to me, just go build a business. Don't worry about raising money. It's not always about, you don't always need money to basically build a great business, I think.
Not every business requires venture funding, correct.
Can you ask a question, please? Over here. Okay. I would like to know what kind of agreement over here, maybe Mr. Mansour or Chucrallah.
Go ahead.
Okay, what kind of agreement you will have with a group of people that they have a good idea that you like and they have the know-how, skills, the only thing they don't have is the money, and then you invest in that things. What kind of an agreement you will have with this group of people or with this person? Maybe some detail about some kind of an agreement. Just a sample or the latest one that you've mentioned.
Sure. When we invest in a company, our term sheet is very standard, and I think Paul's term sheet, I know it also as well very well, is standard. We negotiate a valuation. We invest the money on the basis of the valuation. We always invest in a minority position, so we never take majority in the company. We could discuss things such as fund disbursements based on milestones. And we also take some kind of, because we are minority investors in those companies, we take some protective clauses with regards to very important decisions that require also our acceptance. There's a typical shareholder agreement and subscription agreement.
Do you have some sample on the internet, at least to have an idea, like 50%, 50%?
No,
10,
this
70?
is not a business where you can download. I mean, there are a lot of term sheets out there, a lot of shareholder agreement out there you can read. But we don't have a sample online. Every case is very unique. So,
basically, once you've solved the issue of valuation, everything becomes easy. You have to agree on valuation and apply your strategy. We're taking minority stakes all the time, and the rest, it's pretty straightforward.
All right, one last question.
Hi, my name is Zaina Nazir from Jada Daden. We're like a luxury body and bath product. We're three sisters, started in London about 5 years ago, and we did really well. We sell at Harrods and Whole Foods, and then we're now selling in the US, and we're looking to start in Lebanon, so to move the operation and everything to Lebanon. So we're looking to talk to one of you. What do you advise as a start? I mean, I think Henri said there's no Lebanese market. So, but is there an advantage to move everything to Lebanon? And yeah, what do you advise?
What's the sector, sorry?
It's in luxury body and bath products.
Okay. I mean, when you say there's no Lebanese market, let's not qualify that because it's correct factually. What you need to show us or any investor in the VC space is that you can multiply your revenues by something which is larger than the factor that by which you multiply your costs. So if you add, you go from $1 million to $10 million without multiplying your cost by 10, we're happy to look at it. So that's in terms of there's no Lebanese market. There might be a Lebanese market or a Lebanese dimension. You need to show that in this dimension, profitability can be interesting eventually. Because part of our role is perhaps to finance the phase where you are not profitable, where you need the cash flow. Now, in terms of giving you advice on a specific transaction right away for here, I mean, it's virtually impossible.
Sorry, my question was really, I mean, would it make sense to operate in Lebanon without necessarily focusing on Lebanese market if there is no Lebanese market?
Well, I mean, I can probably say, for us, it makes perfect sense. This is a country where you have a good talent base, highly educated, skilled people, well-traveled, languages are very important, and it makes a difference, right, while building a company to have that kind of talent at a very reasonable, affordable rates, right? We're not extremely expensive, and you can build a good operation, a good backhand, a good R&D in Lebanon Now the challenge is the numbers, obviously. I think the market, the entrepreneurship market, is growing faster than the talent market. So we have all of our companies are very squeezed on talent acquisition. And therefore, I advise you when you want to move to Lebanon to spend some time talent scouting first, because that's the only investment you need to do. The rest is going to be easier.
Yeah, so as you could see, there was an imposter of that panel. It's me, because I have to sadly cut you short. Guys, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please applaud them. Thank you, Marvin.